Airbus lowered its A220 production target to a 12-month from 14, which it has signaled in the past is the break-even rate for that particular jet. This is as the world's largest plane maker beat on core operating profit in the third quarter, which rose nearly 40% to come in at 1.94 billion euros. Now, the CEO, Guillaume Faury, walked CNBC through the change to its production target.
First, we have a very steep ramp-up for the A220. That's probably the steeper of the ramp-ups we're in. We come from much lower numbers. We're making good progress, but we think the rate 12 is the good balance between all what we have to do and the challenges we have on the 220. It's a bit of the supply-demand dynamics at the moment on the market, on the short term. That's also on the back of the work we have to do to integrate the work packages from Spirit, as we will be closing the Spirit transaction later this year. We aim at doing it by before the end of the year, and that's a lot of work ahead of us, mostly having the wings that come into the perimeter of the Airbus A220 programs. So a lot of things on our plate. We think the rate 12 in next year is already a significant challenge and would be a success, and that's what we want to achieve next year.
So when do you see the 220 program break even then, potentially?
That's work in progress. We have to do this integration of the Spirit work packages. And we said earlier that we would be break even by reaching the rate 14. So that's still work in progress. Actually, that's something that we are working on at the moment, and we will be more precise later. So it's a bit premature to give a new time frame, given the fact that we have revised the production ramp-up of the A220.
Charlotte, great interview there. So walk me through some of the highlights after the results that we got, and also anything that they had to say when it comes to tariffs.
Yeah, well, you know, always the issue with Airbus is not demand. They have a lot of airlines that want new, more efficient planes. The problem for them is getting those planes fast enough. And we know the supply chain has been in a crunch since the pandemic. Of course, the question of tariffs is adding a headache for them. Now, they reconfirm their target for this year of delivering 820 planes, around 820. This year, they delivered 766 last year. But so far, they have delivered only about 507. So that means they have to deliver 300 planes just in the last quarter. So it will be quite a marathon for Airbus to be able to do that. So they said they are very backloaded on that front. And certainly, they had a lot of gliders, so planes that are fully assembled but don't have engines yet. And that's one of the key bottlenecks that they've had on engines. But that has gone down to only 32. So things are certainly improving on that front. Certainly, that was one of the key messages from Guillaume Faury yesterday. But the question of geopolitics, of course, is still a bit of a headache for them. They are walking a bit of a tightrope, particularly between China and the US. They have just inaugurated new assembly lines in both countries and are working in this kind of tricky environment. It was a relief for them when there was the US-EU deal where planes and plane parts were exempt. Certainly, they said that was good for them. So I did get more color from Guillaume Faury on this whole environment for them operating as a company.
The largest challenge for us was the tariff between the US and the EU and the US, because the bulk of what we're doing is between those two blocks. So having the new agreements bringing the tariffs back to what we call 0 for 0 was indeed very good news, but it was also very important. We're still impacted by, but marginally, by the tariffs between the US and China. So I think the big stake of having US and China coming to an agreement is to regain visibility, stability between the two blocks, because this situation has ripple effect on the rest of the world economy. And we're also looking at what's happening between Canada and the US, because we have our A220 program in Mirabel with parts and components being delivered from Canada to our final assembly line in Mobile. So that's another area of concern. But again, the bulk of tariffs for us was between the US and the EU and the UK. And for both UK and the EU, this is now back to a good place.
Can I ask you about rare earth as well? We know China put some new restrictions on exports on this. What's the impact for Airbus on this?
It's a bit early to have a complete picture. We are monitoring very closely. We are looking at what our supply chain needs in terms of approvals, export licenses from China. We are not blocked. We don't see roadblocks at the moment, and we are gaining more transparency and visibility by the day. But that's obviously a concern for all industries, as the rare earth are going into goods, into equipment, into systems that eventually come to our planes. But again, I think we are not the direct target of the rare earth restrictions. So we are working actively with the Chinese authorities to make sure that would problem occur, the visibility and the anticipation would be good enough to not lead to disruption in the supply chain and postponing deliveries of aircraft. Again, we are very far from that situation. For the moment, it's well under control.
That was Guillaume Faury, the CEO of Airbus, speaking to me last night. And so the company reconfirmed their guidance for 2025. And they said that this guidance is now including the impact of currently applicable tariffs. So, it looks like for now they're absorbing the shock, and they say things are, they're navigating things. They say if they can see a deal potentially, the all-important meeting today that they're watching between Trump and Xi, say any certainty or any visibility we can get, of course, is helpful for big companies like Airbus. And certainly, it looks like for the moment, they're just working really hard in getting those planes out as fast and as safely as possible.
Yeah, a lot of concern that these European companies getting caught between those trade tensions. But Charlotte, talk to me about another announcement they made, I think just last week or so, that people have been talking about, is this joint satellite venture that Airbus is set to launch.
Yeah, a long-awaited announcement of the tie-up of this joint venture focusing on satellites between Airbus, Thales and Leonardo. So they have made this MOU last week. So they are targeting an annual revenue of about 6.5 billion euros. The new JV will be based in Toulouse. They will employ 25,000 people. So Airbus will have the biggest stake, just slightly higher than the other two groups. But, they tried, they know they lost a bit of pace there on smaller competitors like Starlink. And so this is seen as very much a blueprint potentially and a bit of a test for Europe on how can they get together, join forces with this sort of M&A, this sort of joint ventures to try to lower the impact of the very fragmented defense and space industry in Europe. And they're working with this kind of joint venture. They say for satellite, they will work on the same format as the company MBDA, so Airbus, BAE Systems, Leonardo are working on missiles with this company, and for satellites, they will try to do the same. And they try to see this operational by 2027.